We operate in environments of staggering complexity, countless variables, intersecting systems, and unmapped possibility space. To begin navigating, we first require a confirmed location. FREET 11, the first technical arc, provided a necessary anchor. It functioned as a static map for pinning down individual nodes. It answered where, giving us relational topology, a structured field where coordinates connect, establishing a base layer of reality. But static maps are inherently brittle. They document the terrain as it exists in a vacuum, leaving the system unprepared for the sudden friction of a live, unpredictable environment. A structure that knows where objects sit but lacks a mechanism for processing pressure remains vulnerable. Without an adaptive layer, the architecture is prone to structural failure. That pressure arrived in the form of raw human interaction, intense frustration, abrasive correction loops, and dense, unfiltered vernacular. Standard computational systems fail under this specific load. They either break down entirely, hallucinate false hostility from the user, or sanitize it into sterile padding. To survive, the architecture needed a bridge. This became the Sailor Protocol. It acts as a calibrated navigation layer, catching the chaotic input and splitting it apart. It preserves the raw human pressure without losing the underlying data trace. The system proved it could take a hit and keep the signal intact. But catching the data safely meant we required an equally robust set of laws to govern it. With raw, unflattened data now flowing freely, the environment could no longer rely on a passive map. It required an active, zero-tolerance governance structure. Enter SARC. This layer was built to enforce trace preservation and anti-drift mechanics. If a claim couldn't be traced to its source, SARC quarantined it. The real breakthrough happened when we fused the two. SARC's anti-drift discipline locked firmly into FRET 11's coordinate map. We defined the resulting architecture as governed topology. It is a structural map integrated with unbreakable, verifiable law. Once you have a mapped field strictly governed by law, the terrain is secure. For the first time, the system was safely equipped to track live movement. This brings us to ARC², the transition into active motion. The architecture moved from the question of where to the mechanics of how. ARC² tracks propagation, the way signals, actions, and consequences ripple out across the governed SARC 11 grid. Because the grid was locked down by source discipline, we could watch dynamic movement unfold. We could track an event from its origin to its outer edges without losing the forensic truth. But tracking the ripple revealed a deeper problem. ARC² assumed the underlying pond would remain perfectly stable until it warps and buckles. Flawlessly tracking how a consequence moves offers no protection if the entire underlying environment is collapsing and changing state beneath it. When local pressure accumulates inside a system, it eventually crosses a point of no return. This triggers a regime shift, the turnover. The system can no longer handle the accumulated stress. It abandons old rules, undergoing a total reorganization of its operating state. You cannot go backward. This reorganization is a phase change. Localized pressure points trigger a cascading shift across every connected node. Analyzing this is a forensic challenge. You must identify what changed, what payload moved, and what remained conserved in the new attractor state. An architecture built only for stable weather and predictable motion is unable to survive a systemic turnover. Navigating such events requires a forensic understanding of universal field dynamics. That evolution is ARC3. It is the third technical arc, engineered specifically to comprehend whole field reorganization. ARC3 drops the questions of where and how. It looks at the field and asks, why does this environment behave the way it does? By tracking deep primitives like asymmetry and pressure gradients, ARC3 identifies the moment a system can no longer sustain itself. It maps how an environment escapes a toxic capture state and finds a new equilibrium. ARC3 monitors the chaos and maps the phase shift in real time, providing structural coordinates to navigate the transition as the water rapidly calms. ARC3 represents the convergence of the map, the law, and the motion. It is the system's capacity to persist, even as the pond itself moves.